Hello once again, and welcome back to another sketchbook session. Today, I thought I'd tell you guys the story about my time working at Tim Hortons. But before we get to the story, I want to just advertise my snail mail club. I have the May mail theme done and ready to ship. So if you like what you saw on the screen there, I have a monthly subscription available on my Ko-fi page, and I also have a listing on Etsy for like a one-time purchase or 3-month sign up. If you like nature focused art and if you want to receive stickers, yeah, so I just wanted to self-insert a promo about it because I haven't really made any marketing or advertisement about it that much. I just wanted to get really started, and I'm not really expecting anybody to join yet or for a couple of months, but I just wanted to get that started and snowball my way into creating more art and sharing that and hopefully making a living out of it. But yeah, if you're interested, I would love for you to join the club. Join the club! I don't know if I should keep that in. Anyways, so I was at Tim Hortons for 5 years between 2014 to 2019, just before the COVID hit, and I was 19. Actually, no, I turned 20 at the time, and I remember during the interview, they told me they would give me a lot of hours because that particular store was really busy. So I was fine with that, and I was also very desperate for it to move out of my mom's house. So I took the job, started like the next day right away. And that store was open like 24 hours, but I mainly worked mornings and the sometimes afternoon shift. I've never worked like overnight. The latest I've stayed was like 12 a.m. And like any fast food chain work crazy amount of hours. This was pre-COVID, so I'm not sure if it's true now, but depending on the manager and the owner, of course, you can be sure that you'll get the full 80 hours if you're a full time. Um, but that's, of course, dependent on whether you have really good work ethic and if the managers like you or like working with you. Um, and I remember working like 100 hours several times per paycheck, so like in 2 weeks. But if I wasn't doing overtime, I would get my full 80 hours. And in Ontario, once you hit, I think like past 88 hours, it's considered overtime. And that means you will get paid time and a half. Yeah, so working full time, I think it took me like a year and some months before I had enough in my savings account and emergency funds to be able to move out. And that's, of course, finding apartments in Toronto at that time. But I found a studio apartment for like $750, which was like a standard rate in 2016. That's the year I moved out. Um, yeah, I feel like that's so cheap now because these days you can't even get a room, like a shared space with your own room for that price. I think now it's like minimum 900 at 1200 for just a room and shared space, which is crazy. But yeah, I moved out after saving quite a bit, and I think I had about like 6 months worth of rent and expenses. So for like a whole year, I wasn't even looking at my bank account because I was still working at Tim's and I was still hitting those crazy hours, and still was able to save and have like a social life even though I was working like full time, which also now I feel like you can't do. So, yeah, early 20s, having lived alone, it was one of the most eye-opening and cathartic experience. But of course, it was not all bells and whistles. And today, or for at least this video, I think I might have to do a part two. I'm going to talk about the good parts about working at Tim's, or really at a fast food chain, or even like a restaurant. And this was before COVID, so I'm not really sure if some of the things that I'm going to talk about still exist or are still relevant. But the first perk, and I think like one of the best things about working at a fast food chain like Tim Hortons is the free food. And of course, it's the free food. I mean, you save so much money just getting free food and not allocating a quarter of your paycheck to groceries. I feel like that is kind of a norm in a lot of restaurants where you get a free meal for your shift, usually free meal or in a free drink. But that's also very dependent on how lenient your managers are. So I would eat breakfast and lunch there, and then if I end up doing overtime and I have to stay there until like 7, 8 p.m., I'd have my dinner covered. I mean, of course, I still spent money on groceries, but I spend it on like takeout and going to restaurants and indulging in much more pricier foods just because I didn't have to buy a whole month of groceries. So that saved me a lot of money. And I never really got sick of the food because there was just quite a lot of varieties and there was always new products being introduced and being tested. So, you'd have like a breakfast egg with muffin or oatmeal, or you could have soups, and then, of course, the endless bagels and bread. And then you've got your coffee, your ice caps, your teas, your cappuccinos, your hot chocolate in winter, and of course, the Timbit, all the flavors of Timbits. Yeah, so I never really got sick of the food, and I remember a coworker and I would always like experiment and combine things a lot. I think there was like month or two where we made so much variations of grilled cheese, and but yeah, I remember eating so much cheese that time as if I wasn't sensitive to dairy. I was sensitive to dairy. And we had two managers at that store. One was stricter and really quite a bully, but they were pretty lenient on free food, and almost we could almost get anything we wanted throughout our shift. And one of the good things about the store that I worked at was all the workers were like clean freaks. The managers and supervisors really implemented like a good, clean workplace. So food was always correctly checked. There was no food being left out when we had delivery. It goes straight to the fridge, and I know for sure that our restaurant was one of the cleanest ones because the owner of the store had like 11 other stores. And I know for a fact that our store was the cleanest, or one of the cleanest at least, because when I was transferred to a different store to help because they were short staffed, and I saw the condition on that store, I was so gobsmacked surprised. That taught me what to look for in like restaurants if I'm ever eating out. Like, I know signs when things are not being kept clean, and if the store is not following like safety standards. Um, and good job, Miss J. Yeah, good job. Yes. Sorry, that was our cat. She likes to be reaffirmed that she did a good job when she goes to do her business. in the litter box or little robot that we have. Okay, so the second perk of working at Tim Hortons, or really at any fast food chain, is the hours. Like I said in earlier, I was hitting like 100 hours several times. But of course, that was pre-COVID, so I feel like it's very different nowadays. And there's restaurants closing left to right here in Toronto. So, but pre-COVID, I want to say like 2014 to 2018, I feel like that was the peak of hustle culture, and every millennial grinding to work like 8, 9, 10, 12 hours in one day, and then going out and partying until like 2, 3 a.m. That was peak like nightlife for a lot of early 20s, late 20s millennial. And I remember, I want to say a couple of times because I don't want to say several times, but I remember a couple of times where I'd come to work with only like 2, 3 hours of sleep because I was hungover from partying the night before, and I'd come into work and half the staff is on the same boat as me, which sounds crazy, right? But some caffeine in your system, soup and bagels, that fixed you right up. But yeah, I would say that was such a huge perk because you only had to work at like one store to hit the 80 hours that you needed, or more, really. And, in hindsight, nowadays, you need like 2, 3 jobs. But back then, you could have one full time job and not have a part time on the side and earn a living wage. And COVID had a really big impact. But yeah, honestly, it doesn't seem like it's getting any better. So that's why I say it's such a huge perk, because I was still able to have like a social life, even working full time, even when I'm hitting the 100 hours per paycheck. I was still able to have a nightlife, a social life. I was going to like conventions, I was going to concerts, and this was me living by myself already. And I was spending my money, and I felt the worth of my work, and that's very different now. But of course, that was probably different for many restaurants, and at that time, I was just lucky that I found a job that offered a lot of hours. And one of my managers actually told me that he told me that I was actually earning more than he was in several of the paychecks, because I was getting paid hourly, and of course the overtime, and he was salaried, so his paycheck was the same every paycheck, and I don't think he was getting paid overtime. But yeah, that was such a surprise to me. I was like, what? I'm earning more than you and you're the manager? Crazy. Okay, there's only a couple minutes left in the video, so I'm just going to speed run some other good perks working at Tim's back in the day. Okay, so number one was the food, number two was the hours, number three I would say are the tips, depending on the day, if it's a holiday, if it's a weekend, if there's like an event happening, people generally would tip really good. And for a store that was seeing hundreds, sometimes thousands of people in one day, the tips would accumulate. And I'd use the tips for like laundry, for snacks, or when I want to buy knickknacks and stuff. Tips was really good, and it's very different now, of course, because I feel like tips back in the day wasn't so pressured. And you could tip like 50 cents, 25 cents, and even $1, and $1 was like a lot. But yeah, number four would be the company parties. The store that I worked at, particularly, the owner had 11 stores, so our company parties, like Christmas parties, was huge, and everyone would dress up, and we would have like a buffet style dinner. There would be a DJ, there would be a dancing, free alcohol, and there'd be like a table full of prizes that you can win. So if your raffle ticket gets picked, you can win like a keychain to a flat screen TV, which was huge back in what, 2016, 2017. I think I remember one time somebody winning like a PS3 or something. Yeah, I only attended like two parties out of the 5 years that I was there, and I think I won an umbrella and a keychain. Number five are the coworkers and friends that you get to know. And there's good and bad sides and even ugly sides of this particular perk. The last thing I would say would be the confidence and the self esteem that you gain working at any front facing customer service, food service work. After years of working in facing customers, I grew such a thick skin and built so much confidence and self-esteem just working there. But that's a very individualistic experience. But I'll get to that more on the next video. So until next time, I'll continue the story. Okay, bye.